Have you ever noticed how she suddenly starts missing you the moment you stop chasing her? It's not a coincidence, it's psychology. The truth is, sometimes your silence says what your words never could. In this video, we're going to uncover the real reason why walking away changes everything. Not just how she feels about you, but how you see yourself. When you walk away from someone, especially after investing emotionally, you create a space, not just physical, but psychological. This distance isn't about punishing her or playing games. It's about removing your energy from a situation that no longer values it. When you're constantly available, constantly reaching out, or always trying to fix things, she doesn't get the chance to feel your absence. She gets used to your presence like background noise, something always there, unnoticed until it's gone. But the moment you step back, the silence begins to speak louder than any argument or conversation ever could. At first, she might not even realize what's happening. Her mind will try to convince her that she's fine without you, that she doesn't care, that she's the one in control. But the human brain doesn't work like that. When a consistent emotional stimulus disappears, like your attention, your care, your effort, the brain starts to crave it. It begins to search for that emotional pattern that has now been broken. This is where reflection begins, often unconsciously. She starts thinking about why you're no longer around, what changed, and slowly, the memories that she once brushed off begin to resurface. Psychological distance creates emotional awareness. While you were there, her focus was on your flaws, your mistakes, or the small things she thought she didn't like about you. The familiarity made her take the connection for granted. But once you step away, the contrast begins to form. The very things she once dismissed now appear valuable. The qualities she overlooked now become rare in her mind. The same tone of your voice, the way you listened or how you understood her moods, all of that starts to echo in her thoughts. That's the power of absence. It forces the mind to revisit moments it didn't appreciate in real time. Psychological distance also exposes emotional dependency. Many times she may have unconsciously relied on your presence to regulate her emotions. The reassurance from your messages, your understanding during her bad days, your stability when she felt unsure. When that disappears, she feels an emotional void, even if she doesn't admit it. That discomfort isn't always about missing you personally. It's about missing the emotional regulation your presence provided. The space you leave becomes a mirror. It reflects her attachment, her guilt, her confusion, and sometimes her regret. This is why walking away is so powerful. It's not the act of leaving that changes her. It's the emotional silence that follows. The gap between what she had and what she now feels becomes the lesson. Her mind begins to replay moments, trying to find closure or understanding. She starts to ask questions she never asked when you were around. Did she push too hard? Did she take you for granted? Was she emotionally unavailable when you were trying to connect? These questions don't appear when you're chasing her, because she's distracted by your pursuit. They appear when your absence removes the distraction and leaves her alone with her own thoughts. That's when reflection turns into realization, not instantly, not dramatically, but quietly. In those moments when she scrolls through her phone and hesitates on your name, when she hears something that reminds her of you, or when someone else fails to give her the emotional connection she once had. It's the power of space, the kind that allows her to see what she couldn't when you were standing right in front of her. When someone loses what they once had, the mind begins to see everything through a different lens. In relationships, especially when emotions are involved, people often become blind to value until it's no longer within reach. When you walk away, you create a form of loss, not necessarily through conflict or anger, but through absence. This loss triggers a deep psychological process where she starts to see things she ignored before. While your presence may have been consistent and comforting, it also became invisible in its familiarity. The human mind adapts quickly, and what's constant often becomes expected. Only when it's taken away does reality hit with a new kind of sharpness. Loss forces awareness in a way that presence never can. When you were around, she may have been distracted by routine, messages, calls, shared plans, all of it forming a pattern that felt secure. But once that pattern breaks, her emotions begin to unravel. The daily comfort she subconsciously counted on disappears. Suddenly the world feels slightly emptier. It's in that emptiness that the mind starts revisiting what was once taken for granted. She begins to notice the things she dismissed, the effort you gave without asking for recognition, the small ways you showed care that didn't seem significant at the time. Loss makes the invisible visible. There's also a psychological phenomenon at play, called contrast bias. It means that the absence of something valuable makes its qualities stand out more vividly than when it was present. For example, when your emotional support is gone, it becomes easier to recognize how much it grounded her. When your patience is no longer there, she realizes how rare it was. This is why people often say, "You don't know what you've got until it's gone." It's not just a saying, it's a cognitive truth. Presence provides comfort, but loss provides perspective. The clarity that comes from loss isn't always immediate. It often starts subtly. She might find herself remembering your words in moments when she needs comfort, or replaying situations where she now realizes you were right. At first, these thoughts may come with denial or pride. She might try to convince herself that she's fine, that moving on is easy, but clarity doesn't ask for permission. It creeps in through silence. The more time passes without your energy in her life, the more her mind starts connecting the dots. That's when understanding begins, when emotions catch up with reality. This process also has to do with how emotional memory works. Positive emotional experiences are stored deeply, especially when they're tied to security, empathy, and consistency. Even if she once minimized your importance, those memories don't vanish. They stay dormant until triggered by comparison or loneliness. When she interacts with others and doesn't feel the same emotional connection, her mind naturally compares. The contrast amplifies the realization. She starts to see what she lost, not just as a person, but as an experience she can't easily recreate. Loss also breaks emotional autopilot. When you were there, she didn't have to think about how much she depended on you emotionally. Your consistency made her feel safe, even if she didn't acknowledge it. But when you step back, she's forced to face her emotions without that safety net. The stability she once felt now turns into uncertainty, and that discomfort makes her reflect. It's not about missing a person. It's about missing what that person represented: peace, validation, and belonging. Sometimes loss also brings humility. When emotions settle, she begins to recognize how her actions might have contributed to the distance. She replays conversations, notices her tone, and realizes how her behavior may have pushed you away. This is the stage where regret often takes shape, not as guilt, but as awareness. She begins to see that what she called ordinary was actually rare. The same energy she overlooked now feels irreplaceable. It's in this clarity that she begins to truly understand your worth. Loss, in its essence, strips away illusions. While presence can blur reality with routine and comfort, absence exposes truth with silence and reflection. Through that silence, she begins to see what was once hidden in plain sight, that your presence was never just about companionship. It was about emotional grounding, consistency, and value that only becomes visible once it's gone. When you walk away, something powerful begins to unfold within her, a silent war between ego and emotion. On the surface, her ego tries to maintain control. It tells her she doesn't care, that she's fine without you, that she made the right choice. Ego wants to protect pride, to appear unaffected, to keep the upper hand. But beneath that layer, emotion begins to whisper a different story. Emotion doesn't care about control, it only feels. It feels the emptiness, the silence, the shift in energy when you're no longer there. And while the ego shouts to stay strong, the emotion slowly starts to win the battle. The conflict begins subtly. At first, she convinces herself that your absence doesn't matter. She distracts herself with friends, social media, or new experiences, anything that keeps her from sitting with the feeling of loss. This is ego in survival mode. It's her mind's way of avoiding vulnerability. But emotions have patience. They don't fade just because she ignores them. Over time, those suppressed feelings begin to surface in moments she least expects. When a song reminds her of you, when she passes by a place you once went together, or when someone new fails to make her feel the same way, that's when the ego starts to weaken. The ego thrives on perception. It wants to appear strong, independent, and untouched. It feeds on validation from others and reassurance from self-talk. But emotion lives in truth. It doesn't follow logic, and it doesn't care about appearances. It wants connection, warmth, and meaning. So even when she posts pictures looking happy or pretends she's moved on, her emotions quietly resist that story. Deep down, she feels the dissonance between what she shows and what she truly feels. That emotional contradiction is what keeps her restless, torn between wanting to reach out and refusing to lose her pride. This internal tug of war can be exhausting. The ego tells her, don't text him first, while emotion says, you miss him. The ego insists he wasn't that important, while emotion reminds her of how deeply she once felt understood. The more she tries to silence her emotions, the louder they become. This is the stage where reflection starts to hurt, not because of regret at first, but because of resistance. She starts questioning herself, wondering why she still feels connected to someone she tried to forget. It's not weakness, it's human nature. The heart doesn't let go just because the mind decides to. When you were present, the ego didn't have to compete. You were there, reaching out, showing care, keeping things stable. That constant reassurance allowed her ego to feel secure. But when you walk away, that validation disappears, and she's forced to face her own emotional imbalance. The absence becomes a mirror reflecting both her pride and her pain. She begins to see that her ego made choices to protect her image, not her peace. And that realization creates discomfort, the kind that makes her rethink how she handled the connection. In most cases, the ego tries to reassert dominance by rationalizing the loss. She might tell herself you are flawed, unavailable, or not right for her. These narratives help her temporarily silence her feelings, but emotion always finds a way back. It returns through longing, nostalgia, and the quiet moments when she allows herself to feel instead of perform strength. The longer this inner conflict continues, the more tiring it becomes to maintain emotional distance. Eventually, the ego's resistance begins to weaken, not because she loses pride, but because she grows tired of denying truth. It's in this emotional battle that true reflection takes place. The tension between ego and emotion forces her to confront what was real and what was built on pride. Ego made her believe she could replace you easily, but emotion reminds her that connections built on depth can't be substituted. This contrast becomes a powerful lesson. It reveals that strength doesn't come from ignoring feelings. It comes from acknowledging them. And once she begins to see that, the emotional tide shifts completely within her. Every connection between two people is built on an exchange of energy, emotional, mental, and sometimes spiritual. When you were present, you were feeding that connection with your energy. You offered her attention, understanding, patience, and consistency. Even when she didn't consciously acknowledge it, she was being nourished by it. People often underestimate how deeply energy impacts relationships. It's not just about what you say or do, it's about how your presence makes someone feel. Your energy was something she could depend on, a steady source of validation, comfort, and emotional grounding. But the moment you pull that energy back, a shift occurs, the atmosphere changes, and so does she. When you walk away, you're not just removing your physical presence, you're withdrawing your energy. The calls stop. The messages end, and the emotional investment you once poured in disappears. To her, that absence feels unnatural, even if she was the one who seemed distant first. The mind becomes unsettled when something that once felt constant suddenly vanishes. She may not understand it logically, but she begins to feel the emptiness your withdrawal leaves behind. This isn't about punishment or manipulation, it's the natural response to an imbalance in emotional energy. During your presence, she was accustomed to your energy flowing toward her. Whether it was through empathy, attention, or affection, it became part of her emotional routine. Your energy validated her, reassured her, and even boosted her self-image. But when you stop giving, that validation disappears, and her emotional state begins to shift. She may initially brush it off, pretending she's fine, but deep down, her subconscious notices the void. It's like suddenly losing warmth in a room you never realized was heated. Only when it turns cold do you recognize how much it mattered. The withdrawal of energy also exposes dependency. When someone gets used to receiving emotional energy from you, they start relying on it for balance. It's subtle and often unnoticed until it's gone. Your support might have been her comfort zone, the place she turned to for reassurance without realizing it. So when you step back, she's forced to confront her own emotional instability. She starts to feel restless, uncertain, or even irritated, not because of what you did, but because of what she's no longer getting from you. That discomfort isn't rejection, it's recognition. Recognition of how much your energy stabilized her world. Energy has a frequency, and when yours exits her life, her emotional frequency changes too. She might find herself surrounded by people yet still feeling disconnected. Conversations may seem dull, and interactions with others may feel shallow. The unique emotional charge your presence carried is missing, and that realization starts to sink in slowly. She may try to replace it with new experiences, but it won't feel the same. The emotional rhythm that once existed between you both can't be easily replicated because genuine energy exchange isn't about attention, it's about connection. This is where the internal confusion begins for her. The absence of your energy makes her question her emotions. She wonders why she's thinking about you more now than before. She starts to replay moments, trying to figure out when things changed. It's because her emotional system is trying to adjust to the loss of energetic balance. It's similar to emotional withdrawal, not in a manipulative sense, but in the way the human heart responds to sudden stillness after consistent movement. The energy you once gave created motion, and when that motion stops, the stillness becomes deafening. Over time, this energetic void becomes a mirror. She begins to see how much she depended on your presence for emotional equilibrium. She realizes that your energy wasn't just comforting, it was grounding. Without it, she feels slightly lost, unable to replicate that sense of safety. That's when awareness deepens. She starts to connect the dots between your withdrawal and her current emotional state. It's not about missing you as a person at first. It's about missing how your energy made her feel, seen, understood, and valued in ways she didn't comprehend until it was gone. Human psychology is wired to desire what feels rare. The moment something becomes less accessible, its perceived value rises. This principle applies not only to material possessions, but also to emotional connections. When you were constantly available, she subconsciously categorized your presence as guaranteed. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate you, it's that consistency, when unbalanced, creates comfort that slowly turns into complacency. She knew that no matter what happened, you'd reach out, you'd try, you'd stay. But the moment you withdraw, the equation shifts. What was once ordinary suddenly becomes rare, and rarity always awakens attention. Scarcity forces the mind to reevaluate worth. When your attention was abundant, it was easy for her to overlook it. She might have felt secure enough to test your patience, knowing you'd still show up. But when you stop showing up, the psychology of scarcity begins to work on her subconscious. She starts to sense that she no longer has unlimited access to your time, your care, and your emotional energy. And in that realization, value emerges. It's not manipulation, it's human nature. What's always available loses excitement. What's uncertain becomes desirable. When you walk away, you stop feeding her the comfort of predictability. The texts stop coming, your presence fades from her day, and the energy that once revolved around her is redirected toward yourself. That sudden absence disrupts the pattern she grew used to. Now, instead of assuming your attention, she begins to crave it. The same words that once felt routine now hold meaning. The same presence she once ignored now feels significant. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it builds quietly in the spaces between your silence. Scarcity also creates curiosity. When you were always there, she didn't have to wonder what you were thinking or feeling. She already knew. You made it clear through your actions. But once you withdraw, that clarity disappears. Suddenly, she doesn't know if you still care, if you've moved on, or if someone else has your attention. The mind naturally hates uncertainty, and curiosity becomes its way of seeking control. She might find herself checking your social media, asking mutual friends about you, or replaying past moments to find clues about where she lost your focus. This is the emotional impact of scarcity. It transforms indifference into intrigue. Scarcity also triggers emotional contrast. When she interacts with others, she unconsciously compares the quality of connection. Maybe others give her attention, but it doesn't feel the same. Maybe they're interested, but they don't have your depth or your energy. That contrast reinforces the value she once overlooked. The less accessible you are, the more she begins to notice what she can't easily find elsewhere. It's no longer about wanting you back for comfort. It's about realizing that what she lost isn't easily replaced. Scarcity brings depth to the surface. This dynamic also has to do with the law of supply and demand in emotional terms. When something feels abundant, the emotional demand for it decreases, but when it becomes rare, demand spikes. By walking away, you reduce the supply of your emotional presence, and in doing so, you remind her, consciously or not, that your attention was never owed, it was given. This shift restores balance. She begins to understand that your time, affection, and energy have value, and that value must be reciprocated, not taken for granted. When you finally step back, when you stop trying to prove your worth, and when your focus shifts inward, that's when true masculine detachment begins. It's not coldness, and it's not about being heartless. Detachment is about self-control, the ability to stay grounded in your own energy regardless of how she reacts. In most relationships, especially those where emotional imbalance exists, men tend to give more of their attention, validation, and stability than they receive. Over time, this overinvestment tips the scale, and emotional polarity, the natural attraction between masculine and feminine energy, starts to fade. Detachment restores that lost balance. Masculine detachment is the act of reclaiming your emotional independence. It's when you stop seeking validation through her responses. You stop chasing attention, approval, or closure. Instead, you return to yourself, your purpose, your discipline, your calm. When you do this, the energy dynamic begins to shift. Feminine energy by nature is drawn to grounded strength. When you detach, you stop feeding chaos and start embodying certainty. That certainty creates a magnetic pull. She may not understand it consciously, but on a deeper level, she begins to feel the change in your energy. In the beginning, she might mistake your detachment for indifference. She may even test it, sending mixed signals, trying to get your attention, or behaving in ways that used to affect you. But the power of masculine detachment lies in your consistency. When you don't react emotionally, you communicate something stronger than words. You're no longer dependent on her validation. That calm indifference challenges her emotionally because it's the opposite of what she's used to. She can no longer control the emotional rhythm of the connection, and that uncertainty forces her to reflect. Feminine energy thrives in emotion, while masculine energy thrives in direction. When you detach, you return to direction, to your goals, your growth, your peace. This balance restores polarity. The moment you stop overgiving, you stop suffocating the connection with neediness. You stop trying to fix things that were never yours to fix. Instead, your silence begins to speak for you. She starts to feel your absence not as punishment, but as strength. The same emotional space that once felt chaotic now feels controlled. And within that stillness, she begins to crave your energy again. Not because you're chasing, but because you've pulled back into your natural state of leadership and stability. Masculine detachment also creates emotional safety, paradoxically. When you're no longer reactive or emotionally dependent, she senses that your emotions are stable, that you're not easily shaken. This creates a feeling of trust, even from a distance. It reminds her that your presence wasn't built on insecurity or desperation, it was built on choice. Women naturally respect choice. When you choose to walk away not out of anger but out of self-respect, it leaves a lasting impression. That kind of restraint shows control, and control is one of the strongest forms of attraction there is. This detachment also allows you to observe instead of react. You begin to see things clearly, her patterns, your boundaries, and the dynamic for what it truly was. You stop trying to change her, and in doing so, you change yourself. That inner peace radiates outward, and she feels it. The very energy that once chased her is now grounded, and that groundedness draws her curiosity. It's not about making her miss you, it's about restoring the energetic balance that was lost when you overextended yourself. Masculine detachment reminds her of polarity, that you are not meant to be emotionally consumed by her mood or validation. You're meant to lead through presence, not persuasion. And when you embody that presence again, calm, confident, unbothered, it reignites the attraction that was dulled by emotional excess. She begins to feel the weight of your absence, not because of words or actions, but because the balance between masculine and feminine energy has finally been restored through your silence, control, and emotional distance.